to set it to mute participants on entry.
Hello. Hello, one and all.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Still got some folks in the waiting room. I turned off the waiting room, so hopefully that won't continue, but I'll keep admitting everybody.
Hello and greetings. We can greet people many, many times. If we need to do it
Yes.
100 times, I think that's absolutely fine under these strange times. It's great to see so many familiar faces, which is super, and many unfamiliar faces, which is also very nice. If my face and voice is unfamiliar to you, I am Shane. I'm one of the CIT team of facilitators, and I'm really happy to be on this call every Wednesday and Friday morning. So I've been asked just to do a quick check-in, and I get really excited, but also, yeah, I look forward to these check-ins, from hearing perspectives, voices, questions, wisdom, little nuggets of wisdom from around the world, particularly relating to the components and the skills in CIT. So the opening check-in is really for people to see if we have any questions, or we would like to. We will have opportunities to share how the practice is going and how our resilience is going during these unusual, unpredictable times. But this opening few minutes is particularly for people who have questions. Who I'm sure if you have a question about any of the practices or the components within CIT, other people may have similar questions. So you're doing us all a favor by asking questions. So we're just going to leave it open. Sorry, Michael.
I just want to mention that Marilyn Turkovich, who is, as you probably know, is the executive director of the charter, sends her regrets. She really wanted to be here. She's healthy, she's fine, but she's working on an application to get some funding for the charter, some emergency funding for the charter. So we are grateful that she's doing that work while we can be here. And so Shane's going to take it from here. But I'm going to start putting people into some different groups while he's doing that. So I'll try to answer any questions that come up that Shane or Jennifer or some of the other facilitators don't answer. But I'm not like doing other work over here. I'm just trying to get everyone situated. So thanks, Shane.
Well explained, Michael. Thank you. So yeah, it's a good point. Actually, you'll also see that there's a number of other facilitators as part of the CIT team by choice to be here, because I think they enjoy this as much as everybody else and find it very useful, particularly some of the skills that we're continuing to do. So you'll see Jennifer, you'll see Rebecca, you'll see Kristen and Anya, and if I've missed anybody, I apologize. People may have joined us in the last few minutes, but if this is your first resiliency extra session, I hope you find it beneficial too. So this Irishman is going to stop talking for a while for a change, and I'm going to leave the space to anybody else who might want to check in and just tell us how the practice, in terms of questions you have for ourselves, how has it been for you, and what questions do you have about the CIT practice or practices? Lots of smiles, which is good. And silence, which is great. Hello.
My name is Anne.
Hello, Anne.
I'm in Lubbock, Texas, and I work at a university. This is my second time, and I did get on the website and tried to find a little bit more information. But I guess this for me is just a matter of everything sinking in about what this is all about. I've been exposed to meditation and that kind of thing before, but I liked the idea of the resources, and that was very helpful for me this past week. So that's all I have to say. I just letting you know how it is for me.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for jumping in, and also for being with us last week. I really enjoyed your sharing last week, so thank you.
I can also, if So real quick, Rebecca, but Anne Marie, if you have any specific questions afterwards, if you want to follow up with us, like in terms of where resources may be located on the website or things like that, please reach out to us. You can go info@compassionateintegrity.org, and actually a lot of us get that email if you send it to that one source. So it's not like a black hole that you send it to and no one ever looks at. So that's a good email. And then I might just respond to the question that's in the chat. I think, Rebecca, is that what you were going to
Yes.
bring up? So there is a question in the chat. I'm wondering if anyone has wisdom about specific uses of mindfulness with regard to helping us make decisions to go out in dilemma situations where others need help, but we have risky health issues ourselves. And so it's a great question. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in CIT is the idea that there are two sides, two wings to the bird, if you will. There's the compassion wing of the bird, which is our motivation to want to go out and help others and to alleviate their suffering. But the bird can't fly with just one wing. It needs the other wing of discernment or wisdom. And I think that's really where the question comes in, is how do we then take our compassion and do things that are really for the long-term benefit of people, including ourselves, right? So we don't want to put ourselves at risk. Not to skirt the question, but one of the things we will be doing in about 30 minutes is we'll be introducing a new practice it's a mindfulness practice as well. And it's a practice where we begin to start to look at our beneficial and harmful mental states or mental states that we all experience that can either lead us towards greater well-being and the well-being of others, or can be those kinds of mental states that actually cause us harm and can potentially cause harm to others around us. So we're going to talk about that in a little while and talk about how through the practice we can begin to use that discernment for ourselves without any of us saying this is what you should do or this is how you should apply this, but for ourselves analyze, is this truly beneficial for me and others, or is it more harmful for me and others? And that's going to be part of the practice that we go into in about 30 minutes. So if, with your permission, Lori, I will table that for about 30 minutes.
Thank you, Michael and Laurie. And yeah, please feel free to put questions in the chat as well if you don't want to unmute yourself and just ask away. But it's a very prevalent, an important question there, and I think many people can relate to that one.
This is Ken. I'm in Henderson, Nevada. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Ken, good to see you again.
One of the things that come up for me this last week or so is my wife and I are self-isolating, and because we're somewhat vulnerable, and we went out to get something, and I recognized how many of the communities that I'm involved with now online are international types of communities. And when I go out on the street, and I went out to do something, it felt strange. It felt like there was a very limited community I was interacting with, and it felt somewhat hostile. So I'm beginning to think about how's this going to be coming out of this experience of being connected globally, online, and what does that mean for the communities that I connect with as I move out of this environment that I'm in now? And it's kind of exciting, but yet it's like a step at a time. I don't know what it's going to look like.
It's a very honest and important observation, Ken, and I could see lots of people connecting to your observation wherever they may be in the world. And on a personal level, I've been out just a few times where I'm in Madrid, and it's been a complete lockdown for 6 weeks now, but I've also observed something similar. And so I don't know if you're necessarily looking for an answer, and maybe one or two people might want to even come in there and either reiterate or connect with your question, Ken. But certainly looking at the skills in CIT, as we progress through the skills, because they're all built on each other, and you go towards the appreciating systems and interdependence, you really get to a point where we really rely on the fact that we now more than ever in our lives are seeing visibly and feeling that sense of interdependence, interconnectedness, and also solidarity. But sometimes it's more online right now than when we get an opportunity to be so-called in person. So it's a really interesting one, and I don't have an answer for that, but maybe people would like to jump in and comment on that as well. I think that Yvonne is also connecting in some way. She's saying that she completely understands this dilemma, and for her, that this is a very useful practice, self-compassion, because it puts me in perspective about the capabilities and limits. I think it's always to have a knowledge about our capacities and limits. CAT has been very important to help this process, and thank you very much for sharing that, Yvonne.
Hi, I am Fabricia. I am in Marietta, Georgia, and I would like to share, thinking about this question, I was kind of challenging myself and thinking, okay, which skills can you use for these kind of dilemmas? And I was thinking that these situations require integration. It requires that you use wise mind, that you integrate. And then I was thinking maybe tracking. I think that's the name. I'm also studying the manual. I love the language of this theory. I love everything about it. And I was thinking maybe if we are more and more aware of what we feel, our body sensations, and if we do tracking, I think that's the right name, correct me if I'm wrong, we can be aware of how we feel. And I think we need to be really connected with our intuition, and some decisions, they're not, we have to connect the logic and rationalization about it. Okay, this is dangerous, I've exposed this and that. At the same time, our emotions and body sensations, like how I feel about doing this. And it is a dilemma, it's a moral dilemma, because sometimes I've been in situations like this too. Like I want to help. There is someone that I see that is more fragile than I am, but at the same time, I'd be exposing myself and bringing risk home. So in the other way, I think it's when we externalize it, when you talk, we consult with others, when you share how we feel and our reasons too, our logic. I think in those exchanges, we can get help with making the decision in a way that integrates more, like, and we can balance out and see what is the last cost, you know, and more effective response when we can practice compassion and help, but also practice self-compassion and preserve ourselves.
Well, it's a beautiful contribution, and thank you so much, Fabrizia. I'm not sure if you're in Georgia, the country, or Georgia, part of the United States, but you're
United
welcome.
States. Yes.
And thank you for contributing and building on what Ken had asked earlier on. I think you put it beautifully, and the way you were using the language was, what for me was perfect, and it really connects with so many of the components and skills within CIT. And we got to get you onto the facilitator training and all the way through as quickly as we can. We need more people using this language the way you're using.
Let's take maybe one more comment, Shane, from, I think Linda had her hand up. I'm not sure if it was Linda or the person next to Linda.
Michael's hand has been up.
Michael as well, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's take both those, and then we'll go into some breakouts where we'll get some more sharing in.
Okay, I wanted to say my experience was a little different than Ken's. We live in St. Louis, and the St. Louis city parks are still open, and we keep social distance, but we walk in our neighborhood, and I feel like I've met so many more neighbors. I'm feeling a real connection to my community. People are more interested in talking and saying hi, and it just feels wonderful in that regard. Also, my church has been doing a lot of activities virtually, and we have like social hours, and I'm getting to talk to people that I didn't normally talk to at church. And so it's really building relationships for me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm enjoying it.
Just for clarity, this is Linda, and that's Rachel.
Thank you for clarifying, Linda and Rachel.
Sure. Thank you.
And thanks for your comments. Thank you. It's nice to get some balance. It's not the same wherever we are in the world, but it's nice to feel that there's a challenge to that as well. And I think we have another Michael Bannister.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. And you know, Ken, I understand how you're feeling. I'm feeling a little bit more connectedness as people walking by and everybody saying hello and so on. But I can also understand, you know, going out and, you know, how, being aware of the feelings. I mean, we're eventually going to get back to normal, but it's going to be a new normal. And I think all the skills, the resourcing, the grounding, the tracking, using those skills now when you go out in the public, and then when we start doing it again and getting used to it, things will change, but life changes. I'm in upstate New York, outside of Albany, and I remember 9/11, and that affected everybody, and especially here in New York. And when it was over, we got back to normal. It was a new normal. I mean, you think about how you take flights nowadays, but it is a normal, and we get used to that. And just kind of remembering that and focusing, mindfully focusing on today in the moment. And, those people you interacted with may be feeling some of that, their own fear and concern, and that comes out that way too. So.
Thank you, Michael. And from one Michael to another Michael, but thank you, Michael. You shared your own experiences there, but also the empathy that we may need to have for other people, whether that's on the street or in the parks. And Michael's going to be explaining a little more later in the session today about the mental states. So trying to appreciate what other people's mental states might be in this particular time as well is quite important. So thank you for everybody for sharing. Michael, Ella.
Thank you, Shane, and thank you, everyone. The one quick thing on that conversation, whether you've taken CIT or haven't taken CIT, I would point you to the chapter in the manual on common humanity, as well as the online practices on common humanity. Because one of the things I find helpful at this time, both when I'm interacting with people at a distance through Zoom, but then as I may take my dog for a walk or something, is to practice that sense of common humanity, of looking at each person and just recognizing this is another human being that is seeking greater well-being and is having challenges too. And at that level, I relate to all of them. And then there's some deeper practices there as well. But even just that very simple kind of practice is as you look each person in the eye as you're walking by them, even at 6 feet or at 60,000 feet, to be able to look at them and recognize that we're all the same at that very fundamental level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop everybody into their breakout rooms. You'll have a facilitator in each. There'll be Jennifer and Rebecca and Shane and Anya who will be leading, and Kristen will be in one of those groups too to help out. And you guys will do a little bit more specific check-in on kind of how the practices have been going this week, maybe sharing some resources, sharing what's been working for you, and we'll do that for about 15 minutes or so. Remember, you'll automatically get put into the breakout room. If you joined after I set them up, just be patient and you should get filtered into a breakout relatively quickly. And then when we come back, we'll do a practice together that Jennifer will lead us, and then we'll introduce one new practice for this week. So here we go.
All right, before we go, what are we doing in the breakout rooms?
Just checking in on how the practices have been going this week and sharing resources, whatever. You know what to do, Rebecca. I have no doubt. And I was going to unmute everyone, but just remember to unmute yourself when you get there. Welcome back, everybody. We have maybe a minute or two just to get a sense of how that was for people.
If I could just really quickly apologize, we had a beautiful sharing going on and a fellow country person from Ireland was cut off mid-sentence. So apologies, Carmel, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm sorry we couldn't finish the sentence. Okay.
Yeah, that's the, from a time management perspective, that's a wonderful thing about Zoom as opposed to doing it in person. From a time management perspective, it's great, but from a human perspective, it's pretty abrupt. But yeah, so maybe Shane, Anya, Rebecca, Jennifer, do you guys want to just share, obviously not what individuals shared, but just kind of a general sense of how that was?
I'd be happy to share really quickly. There's really, well, for me, it was a really beautiful sharing, both resources and ideas and things that people have been able to do in the past wee while to keep themselves as resilient as possible. So from walking in nature, movement seemed to be a popular one, and nature very much so. Journaling, so just writing down some of the thoughts to put them out on paper. So reflective writing, which is also a component of CIT. Yes, that was mainly it. But it was, yeah, keeping people together and that connections going. So I really appreciated people sharing.
Great. Anyone else?
We had some beautiful resources that were shared that I think resonated with some of the other folks in our group, as well as things that we're doing to help us stay in our resilient zone or our okay zone, and how we're being able to see that show up in common humanity and in some of the service and gratitude that we're able to provide and or share with our communities. So it was very nice.
Thanks, Jennifer. Anya, Rebecca, you want to report in real quickly?
Well, we essentially, yeah, I'm sorry. No, please go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, I think our group was not quite unanimous, but a lot of us really, grounding has been a real go-to for us. We had one member who was really found resourcing to be not only helpful, but enjoyable. So that was nice to know that we were coming back to practice that one a little bit more when we come back today. And then if I would just like to direct everyone to the chat box to a quote that Stephen shared with us. And I think we're all feeling this right now with everything that's being thrown at us in the media. When information doubles, knowledge halves, and wisdom quarters. And I think we probably are all feeling that a little bit now, and how CIT is helping us with that, the wisdom component a little bit to tap back into it. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And Anya?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And Michael, we essentially focused on a situation which is in a country which everything is so strict that we were discussing how privileged we are all, and how resourcing is doing good for us or any other CIT tool, but that there's still the disturbance that we can't help those who are really, really endangered by a lot of other mental stresses through the lockdown. And yeah, we were discussing self-compassion here and the thinking trap of impermanence or permanence. But we were, yeah, sharing this individual situation more than discussing resources, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's great. Yeah, all important topics. And I think to all of your point, we're naturally resilient, and our bodies and minds naturally, move towards places of resilience if we, open up a space for it. And I think all of us are being challenged right now with what's going on in the world and the information, to the quote that Rebecca shared about the amount of information we're getting. And so yeah, we'll touch on that in a second too, when we get to beneficial and harmful mental states. Well, thank you for that. Let's maybe do a practice together that Jennifer, if you would lead us in, and then we'll touch on that final practice.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So we're gonna go back to, or maybe flesh out a little bit, some of our resources. So if you are more comfortable and you wish to turn off your video, feel free. If you would like to close your eyes and find a relaxed, comfortable position for you, we're gonna bring to mind a resource that you may have, something that helps you feel strong or resilient, calm, peaceful, something that brings you joy or happiness, maybe helps you to regulate yourself, get back into your okay zone. So just bring something to mind And now, as you're thinking of your resource, try to bring to mind and utilize as many of your senses as you can. Are there smells that you can associate with it? Are you outside in nature? Are you at home in the kitchen? What do you smell? Is there something specific that you can see? Are there colors? Are there shapes? What is your mind seeing as you visualize this resource? What are you hearing? What sounds are you linking directly with your resource or the world around you as you're experiencing your resource? Is there something about your resource that has a specific touch? Is your resource tactile at all? Do you feel soft? Is it the warm fur of a loved pet? Is there a taste that you can associate with your resource? Think about this resource in as much detail as you possibly can, adding to it as you work with it a little bit more. But right now, think about the sensations that you're feeling in your body. And use some of those tracking skills that we've talked about. What sensations can you associate with this resource? Is there a warmth in your chest? Tingling in your fingers? As we get ready to come back to the main room, put the final touches on your resource for now, so that you can go back to this resource or another resource. And using as much detail as possible, remember the sensations in your body and track those, so that when you are maybe feeling dysregulated, out of your resource or out of your resilient zone or your okay zone, you can use these sensations that you're associating with your resource to get back into that space where you're thinking clearly and making good decisions. And when you're ready, please open your eyes and come back to the room with the rest of us.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was wonderful. So, um, so this idea of resourcing and grounding are wonderful skills, as we've all experienced, and I use all the time, every day. And those are great skills for being able to bring our attention into the present moment and to notice the way our autonomic nervous system, the way our body is responding to the world. And right now, as we know, a lot of the things that we take in about the world can be perceived by us, and everyone perceives them a little bit differently based on our own experience, but they can be very threatening. And when we feel that threat, then we begin to have a reaction to that that's starting to kick into that sympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic branch of our autonomic nervous system that gives us some of those sensations of distress, or can really knock us down low if we get taken over by kind of a major parasympathetic kind of reaction. And so we see that all the time. But one of the things I want to introduce now, though, is we talked last week about, let me share my screen here. We talked last week about just a basic focused attention practice. And within CIT, we use that focused attention practice not only for its own benefits, but also to help teach what we call ethical mindfulness, which is a form of kind of self-restraint as we're dealing with others to help benefit ourselves and others. But here, what we're talking about now is we're going to move into how we take what we've learned there and we move it into this third level, which is emotional awareness. And so we start by calming the body and mind. We then bring in a focused attention practice to kind of bring us into that moment. And we didn't really talk about this. We talk about it more in the course and in the manual. You can read about the parts of what we do with ethical mindfulness. Emotional awareness is really about beginning to notice my mental state. And are these mental states actually helpful to me and others, or are they harmful to me and others? Are they leading me towards happiness, or are they taking me away from happiness? And it's a practice. What happens, and some of you may have experienced this, and many of you have a long-term meditation practice. I know when I meditate and do just a focused attention practice, oftentimes, and we talked about this last week, my mind can wander. And this is where, when we're training that dog, the dog wanders around, the puppy wanders around, and I have to have that introspective awareness that kicks in that says, okay, wait a second, we're supposed to be just focusing on the breath. Let's come back and just focus on the breath. That same capacity of the trainer, the person who can be aware of what's going on in the present moment and make judgments about that, is what we're going to focus on this week as emotional awareness. And the reason being is because, as I was saying, is that as I am doing my practice, I notice my mind wanders. Well, guess what? That happens 10,000 times more when I'm just living my life, right? So I experience something, and then next thing you know, we have what's called mental proliferation, and one thought leads to the next thought, leads to an emotion, leads to a reaction, leads to emotion, leads to a behavior. And next thing I know, I look back and I'm like, whoa, how did I get here, right? Because of this normal and very natural way our bodies and minds work. So what we're going to focus on now is maybe taking a little bit more control over that and using a practice to do that. Let me just clear my screen here. And to begin, through the practice we're going to teach this week, and we'll just have a time to do a short one. And again, they're all on the website, and we'll do this again next week. But to sit back and, as I'm practicing, to just notice what is arising in my body and mind, and beginning to be able to notice which of those sensations, thoughts, feelings, emotions are actually benefiting me and which are harmful to me. And so, just as a quick example, right, this is, sorry, a little out of order for this purpose, but so a beneficial mental state is one that, again, leads to our own well-being and the well-being of those around us. A harmful mental state kind of does the opposite, but a really key distinction here is that a harmful mental state has a tendency to distort reality. And oftentimes we don't notice that it's distorting reality. And part of that is a very good reason that it's been a way of seeing the world that has helped us survive. But sometimes just helping us survive over thousands of years isn't necessarily beneficial today, particularly in this current moment. And so some of those beneficial mental states and harmful mental states might, I'll just run through this quickly, might be things like, on a beneficial side, it might be compassion or forgiveness or gratitude. On afflictive, it might be anger, impatience, or fear. But a key thing here is that we don't categorize these things in an either or black and white way. Because again, it depends on whether it's leading towards greater well-being and whether it's distorting reality. So for example, in today's age and in every day, it's useful, for example, to have fear, and I put fear on the top and the bottom as one example of how, if we were talking earlier about wanting to go out and help people, and some of us are fearful that that may not be the best thing to do. We may expose ourselves, expose people in our family to the virus. And the question is, well, you start to try to understand, is that a harmful mental state or a beneficial mental state? If it's seeing reality clearly, where I'm really, and again, no health advice here, this is all personal, your own personal way of looking at it. But in this case, am I seeing it clearly, or am I distorting reality in some way? And so all of these, in some ways, can, based on that definition, be either harmful or beneficial. And so the goal of the practice is to begin to see these things more clearly so we can decide for ourselves whether they're beneficial to us or harmful to us. And the practice we're going to do, which I'll explain in just one second, is a way of being able to create some distance so that we see what's happening. One example I'll give is, and where this kind of builds on the skills we talked about earlier, is that I know early on in this situation, I was on Twitter a lot and reading a lot of news, and I've heard this from a lot of other people too. And for me, I would, let's say I was feeling agitated, I was feeling sensations of stress. And so I would resource or ground, and that would bring me back into my resilience zone. And then I would pick up my phone again and I would look at Twitter again, and I would see all this bombardment of data and various theories of what's going on and everything. And I would get jacked up again. And so then I would do another practice of resourcing and grounding. Well, the resourcing and grounding wasn't changing what was happening in the external world. It was helping me regulate my nervous system. But what I needed to do was go to the next step, which was to begin to analyze what was going on inside the space of my own mind when I would stop resourcing or grounding, saying, I need to look at my phone. Is that a harmful mental state for me, or is it beneficial? Is it causing me suffering, or is it causing me joy and benefit? And I, for me, decided, no, that's not something that is causing me benefit. I can check once a day because for me, it's beneficial to know what's going on, to be aware of what's going on, but to not be so obsessed with it that it was constantly keeping me in a place of a sympathetic response. Similarly, early on, I was talking to my wife and she was like, well, she was also very jacked up and very activated by the whole thing. And she had been speaking to some friends and they were going on as business as normal. They were socializing, they were going to events, they were doing things. And she said, well, I wish I was like them. I wish I didn't have any of this fear. And I said, well, just because they don't have fear doesn't mean that that's a beneficial mental state. Their joy in going out and socializing and continuing and not following the social distancing guidelines could itself be a harmful mental state, because was it distorting reality? Was it not properly really assessing the risk? Was it also perhaps putting themselves and other people in harm's way? And so from our personal decision making, we decided that yes, that wasn't really a beneficial mental state. So I use that example just to say that this isn't an either or, and it's very context specific. And the goal of the practice, which we're going to do real briefly, is to help us step back and see what's going on inside of our bodies and minds so that we don't allow the spark just to go into a forest fire without us actually having some level of control. Now, we'll continue even if we do this practice. I go from spark to forest fire all the time. But I can slow it down. And in times, I actually gain control of it. And I'm able to say, wow, that's a mental state that's not beneficial to me. And I'm chasing after it and I'm attached to it in such a way that it's blowing into a forest fire. And so ultimately what we're trying to gain from this practice is equanimity, the ability to see what's going on without necessarily being caught by it or even trying to push it away. So those are some very, again, move through that kind of quickly. And I want to make sure that we have time to get to the practice. And so I know there may be some chat things, maybe some of the other facilitators can answer some questions that have come up if they're in the chat. And one of the things that we'll talk about, we're going to revisit this same topic next week. So each week we'll kind of reinforce what we did the week before. So if it's not all 100% clear, then give us a week. The other thing you can do is, in addition to the manual, in addition to the practice that is online, we also have podcasts online for each skill. And if you want to listen to the Skill 3 podcast, that'll also go into more detail on this and each of the skills. So given that the time is getting close to the end, I'm going to move us into a practice. And as we do the practice, I'll also give some additional instructions. So with your permission, I would like you all, again, as Jennifer said, you can feel free to mute your screen if you'd like or not, and take a position that is comfortable to you. It can be a seated posture on a cushion. It can be seated in a chair. It can be laying down, whatever you find to be most comfortable. That helps you cultivate that sense of stability and clarity that we talked about the last couple weeks. And so you can close your eyes if you choose, or not. You can leave them open a little bit if you need to. And if you'd like, you can always at any time during the practice do some resourcing or grounding if you're feeling dysregulated. But let's begin this practice with 3 deep breaths. Taking a deep inhalation, filling up the belly, allowing it to extend softly out, and then releasing it fully. And repeat that a second time. And as you release, just allow your shoulders, neck to soften. And then with your third inhalation, gather all your attention into this moment. And then as you release, just feel yourself connected to the ground, to the chair, to a feeling of solidity, the groundedness in this moment. And we'll begin with a focused attention practice. So just bringing your awareness to your breath. Allow your body just to breathe naturally and normally. And rest your awareness on your breath wherever it's most comfortable. Now we're going to shift our awareness from our breath to any experience that you are having in the present moment. Just allow your mind to be expansive and just observe any thought that arises, or feeling, or emotion, or sensation in your body. No need to come back to the breath. Just allow it to be there and observe it without attachment, without really thinking about it or trying to follow the next step in its sequence, but also without pushing it away. Just allow it to be there. You as the observer of your present moment experience. One way to relate to this is to allow your mind to be like the expansive blue sky. The sky is just an open space that allows any cloud or bird, rainbow, plane, anything that emerges in the space of the sky is there. The blue sky doesn't try to hold it back or keep it away or doesn't prefer one over the other. Just allow your mind to be like the blue sky and observe any cloud-like thought, feeling, or emotion just to float in the space of your mind, and then allow it to just go when it's ready. You may notice that these thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations oftentimes just arise out of seemingly nowhere. And if we don't hold too tightly to them, they just dissipate, just like that blue sky and the clouds in them. As we conclude the practice, let's bring our attention back to the sensations of the body, noticing a place in the body that's feeling grounded or connected to the chair, to the floor, to another body part, and track any neutral or pleasant sensations that you're experiencing. Then when you're ready, you can either add a dedicatory wish or a resolve statement, and that will conclude the practice. So thank you, everybody. Just to kind of bring it full circle to the example I was giving. So let's say I am doing my grounding and resourcing because I'm feeling dysregulated and I'm feeling better now. And then the thought emerges in my mind, I need to check Twitter. So usually my reaction to that is, oh, well, then I'm going to check Twitter. It's just one happens and that's the spark. And then while watching, Twitter is the next step in that the spark gets maybe a little ignited, and then I check one article, then the next article, and the fire starts. And next thing you know, I'm all activated. And so with practice, I can realize that, wow, that thought of checking Twitter is just a thought. I don't have to own that thought. I don't have to be that thought. I can just allow it to come up like the cloud in the sky and say, oh, there's that familiar urge just arising. I'm going to let it pass. Now, it may come right back a second later, or a minute later, or an hour later, but even that, with practice, over time, I can just allow it to pass. It may be that, like this morning, it was 10 minutes into it that I realized, oh, wait a second, I'm a little far down the path of spark to forest type fire here. Next time maybe I'll try to practice catching it earlier. But through the practice, the goal of this practice is just to cultivate that equanimity. It's not to do anything, but just to learn that in the practice and in our daily living, we can notice without having to be caught or without having to push away. And so that's the goal of the practice. So we're past time by about 4 minutes. If anyone has like a burning question, we'll go ahead and stop now. But if someone has a burning question that they feel they can't make it till next week, I'm happy to stay on for a couple minutes and answer any of those questions. But for others who need to go, I really enjoyed being with you again this week. Thank you to Shane and Jennifer and Rebecca and Kristen and Anya. And there are other facilitators on too that I probably missed. But anyway, it's been really, really wonderful being with you again. And I hope we get to see you again next week. And again, if someone has a burning question, you can Shane. And then if anyone has a burning question, please unmute and throw it in there.
It's not a burning question, so I apologize. It's a plug for our educator program, which is starting on the 20th of April, next Monday. So anybody who is an educator within this group or know of any educators that would like to take the CIT course for educators, it's starting in 2 different time zones next Monday, and we'd love to have you on board.
There's information about what we got. This is upcoming courses. Sorry. This is why I need to stick to a slideshow. Okay, any final thoughts or questions before we wrap it up? Put that up there too. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Please stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy the practices. I hope that they are helpful, and we look forward to catching up with you in a week, and hopefully everyone is good.
Nice, Shane. Michael, thank you for getting back to me.
Oh, my pleasure, Michael. Thank you. I hope it's helpful.
Oh, it's very helpful. Great. I'm impressing people. I know you, so.
Oh, that's nothing to be impressed about.
Well, I'm not going to tell them that.
Okay, good. Your secret's safe with me. Bye, everybody. I'll see you next week.